What if this isn't a new scandal at all, but the same story repeating itself in a slightly different costume? Because the internet isn't just whispering this time. It's dissecting timelines, replaying red carpet footage, pulling up blind items from January, and asking one uncomfortable question. Is Ariana Grande stuck in a cycle that nobody wants to say out loud? It started with something small. Or at least it looked small. One missing hour at an awards afterparty. No official statement. No dramatic confrontation caught on camera. Just confusion. Ariana reportedly stepped away during the SAG festivities earlier this year, and suddenly no one seemed to know where she was. Ethan Slater, according to Chatter Online, was allegedly looking around trying to figure out what was going on, and when she returned, nothing was explained. Normally that would fade into nothing, but two names began circulating almost immediately. One was vague, the other was very specific. Paul Mescal, an actor who has been gaining serious attention lately. There was no confirmed proof, no photos, no receipts, just speculation. But the timing, the secrecy, and the sudden disappearance were enough for fans to start connecting dots. And then it reportedly happened again. Another city, another brief vanishing act. Suddenly, what could have been brushed off as coincidence started feeling like a pattern. The tone online shifted from cute, wicked romance to something more skeptical. People weren't laughing anymore. They were analyzing. But the real tension didn't begin at the SAG Awards. It actually began earlier, and when you rewind the footage, it looks different now. Think back to the Oscars. The red carpet smiles, the inside embrace. Headlines about how close and glowing they looked together. Ariana and Ethan hugging, whispering, laughing. On paper, it was adorable, the kind of public affection that screams stability. But months later, fans began re-watching those clips with a different lens. Because blind items from January had already suggested that Ariana was emotionally checked out, long before the public noticed. The whispers claimed she had mentally moved on while still appearing publicly invested. Meanwhile, some online chatter suggested Ethan was pushing harder to be seen together, reinforcing the image that everything was solid. No one knows what conversations happened behind closed doors, but the optics now feel strange. When one person looks fully committed and the other might already be halfway out, that imbalance eventually leaks through. And fans are now wondering if that Oscars moment was genuine, or just the final public performance before the cracks became impossible to hide. But if you really want to understand why people are reacting this strongly, you have to zoom out. Because this isn't the first time the timing felt off. When Ariana and Dalton Gomez announced their separation in 2023, the narrative was smooth, respectful, mutual, calm. No drama. Everyone move along. That's how it was framed. But the actual divorce filing didn't happen until February, months later. For a split described as peaceful and clean, that delay raised eyebrows. Why wait? Why the pause between announcement and paperwork? Then came rumors that Ariana agreed to a significant settlement and that an NDA was involved. None of that confirms wrongdoing, but in the court of public opinion, it fueled speculation. Some fans began asking whether Dalton discovered something before the paperwork was finalized. Others suggested the delay simply reflected legal logistics. There's no confirmed answer, but once suspicion starts, it spreads fast, and suddenly people were re-examining when Ethan entered the picture. That's where things become uncomfortable. Ariana and Ethan met on the set of Wicked. On screen, they're co-stars. Off-screen, sparks reportedly flew quickly, but Ethan was still married to Lily J at the time. And not just married, they had recently welcomed a baby. When Lily later shared her experience in a public essay, the tone wasn't angry. It was grieving. She wrote about not expecting to get divorced, especially not after giving birth, and especially not in the shadow of her husband's new relationship with a celebrity. That line hit hard. It shifted sympathy for many people. And once that sympathy shifted, the internet did what it always does. It dug deeper. Old headlines resurfaced. Back in 2014, Naya Rivera had accused Ariana of interfering in her relationship with Big Sean. That accusation was denied at the time, but the memory lingered. Then fans lined up the rest of the timeline. Jai Brooks, rumored overlap with Nathan Sykes, Big Sean, Mac Miller, Pete Davidson, Dalton, Ethan, and now alleged whispers involving Paul Mescal. None of these transitions alone prove anything malicious. Relationships end. People move on. Life is messy. But when the space between chapters becomes consistently short, people start noticing. After Mac Miller's tragic passing, Ariana was publicly with Pete Davidson soon after. The engagement moved fast. The breakup moved just as fast. Then came Dalton. Then Ethan. And if the recent rumors are even partially accurate, the emotional shift towards someone else may have begun before the Ethan chapter fully closed. Again, no confirmed evidence of cheating, just patterns, speed, overlap accusations. Emotional pivoting that appears to happen quickly. That's when the conversation took an unexpected turn. Instead of just calling her a villain, some fans began asking something deeper. What if this isn't calculated betrayal, but avoidance? One comment went viral because it felt less like gossip and more like therapy. A former critic admitted she used to cheat in relationships not because she wanted someone new, but because she was afraid to end things directly. She described staying until resentment built up, then subconsciously creating chaos so the other person would end it for her. That perspective made people pause, because if you overlay that psychology onto Ariana's relationship history, it raises uncomfortable questions. Is she afraid of being alone? Does she struggle to initiate clean endings? Does she emotionally detach first and then let the next connection form before fully closing the previous one? That theory reframes everything. It doesn't excuse hurt, but it shifts the narrative from malicious to avoidant, from manipulative to conflict averse. And then there's the music. When We Can't Be Friends dropped, Ariana framed it as a boundary anthem, a message about protecting peace. But listeners started dissecting the lyrics. Lines about waiting for someone to like her again, about distance and longing. It didn't feel like a generic fan message, it felt intimate, personal. Some fans wondered if the song was directed at Dalton. Others thought it hinted at Ethan. And now, with fresh rumors circulating, people are asking whether her music often doubles as coded confession. Art doesn't always equal autobiography, but Ariana's catalog has historically blurred that line. And when the public already suspects overlap, every lyric becomes evidence in someone's theory. But there's another layer here that makes this situation more complicated. Ariana's brand since the Sweetener era has been built around healing. Anxiety, PTSD, vulnerability. She has spoken openly about trauma and mental health struggles. Many fans see her as gentle, fragile, resilient. Someone who survived horrific circumstances and still chose softness. That image makes it difficult for some supporters to accept the possibility that she could repeatedly find herself in messy romantic triangles. So they defend her. They say she's manipulated, that men chase her, that she's misunderstood. Others push back and argue that being vulnerable doesn't cancel out patterns of behavior, that empathy doesn't erase accountability. And now the internet is split between two narratives. Is she unlucky in love? Or does she subconsciously recreate chaos because it feels familiar? One time could be bad luck, twice could be coincidence. But when similar accusations surface across multiple relationships, people begin questioning whether the common denominator matters. The recent whispers about Paul Mescal may never be confirmed. They might fade like so many rumors before them. But the reaction isn't really about him. It's about cumulative fatigue. Fans feel like they've seen this movie before. Fast romance, intense connection, public affection, sudden shift. New name enters the chat. And each time Ariana appears emotionally somewhere else before the previous chapter fully closes. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe we only see fragments. Maybe private timelines don't match public assumptions. But perception shapes reputation. And right now, perception is shifting. The most unsettling part isn't whether she cheated, it's whether she recognizes the pattern if one exists. Because if the cycle keeps repeating, eventually even loyal fans start asking harder questions. Is she drawn to unavailable men? Does the thrill of intensity override stability? Does she leave relationships directly, or does she allow them to implode? Or is all of this projection from an audience that feels entitled to map her emotional life like a crime board? That's the tension hanging in the air. The SAG disappearance. The Oscars embrace that now looks staged in hindsight. The delayed divorce filing, the wicked timeline. Lily J's heartbreak, the resurfaced accusations from years ago. The fast transitions. The therapy-style fan theory that redefined the narrative. None of it proves guilt, but together it paints a picture that feels familiar. So now the question isn't whether this relationship with Ethan survives. It's whether this chapter ends differently than the others. If the pattern breaks, maybe this was all noise. If it doesn't, people will say they saw it coming. Is Ariana trapped in romantic chaos? Is she unconsciously repeating old emotional scripts? Or is she simply a public figure whose love life is magnified beyond fairness? The internet has chosen its side for now, but stories like this rarely end quietly. And if another name enters the picture soon, the conversation won't just be about gossip anymore. It'll be about character. Because when patterns start to form, they're harder to ignore than any blind item ever could. What do you think?